Most financial advisors follow the industry playbook. Elite advisors choose a different path. I'm Sten Morgan. Welcome to the Elite Financial Advisor Podcast, where top advisors share the strategies, mindsets, and the stories behind building a better business, adding more value, and the courage to grow through resistance. Because becoming an elite advisor is not about working harder and longer. It's about choosing a better path.
There's so many micro steps that can be taken, whether it's offloading something to technology or a service provider, or rethinking with just a little bit about, where do you add the most value and what are those things that you'd like to do. There's never been a better time to be in this business with the technology that exists.
I still feel this resistance of admitting that we have not been doing what we thought we were doing to some degree. And part of that is just accepting what a real full financial plan looks like. And then being able to communicate to a client that if I never see you again, I want you to know here's what a complete plan looks like. Maybe you then say, I'm going to own these two things, and I'm really good at them. You still need help everywhere else. And I think if we don't tell the client that, they may never know they don't have a real plan. Welcome to this episode of the Elite Financial Advisor Podcast. Today we're going to hang out with the president of Facet Wealth. Shruti is very dynamic. I love her conviction on the future of financial advice. Facet has said we are going to deliver comprehensive financial advice on a subscription model to the mass affluent. That's about 40 million people in the US are their target market. As she talks about their model, try not to think of them as competition. They are somewhat disrupting the industry, but in a way I agree with, that consumers want more from us. And so as business owners, we have to figure out, how do we deliver more? Are we purely managing assets or just selling insurance? Or can we actually develop a process and deliver more of holistic advice that the client actually understands? So that's the challenge, and Shruti's going to help us with that. Shruti, thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. Great to see you.
I'm excited to talk. I love what Facet is doing, and I'll have you give intro to all the audience. A lot of us have heard the name, but the idea of the future advisor is a planning-based, results-based advisor, and we're trying to shed off we are just purveyors of products and we have no value in and of our own. We just sell stuff. Facet fully has adopted that, and you guys are saying, hey, this is where the future of financial advice is. So I'd love for you to kind of, in a nutshell, say, here's where we think it's going, and then we'll unpack that.
Awesome. So we obviously think that financial planning has really already evolved, mostly because of what consumers are demanding. If you think about a typical Gen X or millennial or even younger, the way that these consumers are approaching their financial life, and by the way, I would say younger boomers and boomers feel this way too, in the research we've done. But if you think about we call our clients members, but if you put the customer first and you think about their needs, they're not thinking about money as just a retirement plan or, hey, I need to invest my money, right? That's what the industry has told Americans for years. I think largely because the business model has been set up to making money off of investing. But if you really look consumer first and you think about what are their needs, they have hundreds of questions about money. And it's everything from, I just got a raise. Should I move? I want to start a business. Hey, can I afford to have kids? Should I stay home and have a child? Am I planning the right way for retirement? I want to buy a boat. Can I afford to do that? It's all of these questions. And a lot of them, especially in mass affluent, are questions around trade-offs. Should I work 5 more years and, put my kid through private school? And so given all of these questions they have, the headline is, am I doing the right things with my money? Money is a number 1 cause of stress. It's a number 2, in some research, number 1 cause of divorce. And the things that people are grappling with are so much bigger than investments, wealth accumulation, and retirement. And so where do we see the future going? Well, to us, the future is here. We think people actually are looking for advice and guidance, but that's not all. They want advice and guidance on this holistic array of topics, and they want an accountability partner. They want somebody that's going to help them make behavior change that actually gets them to take the action on advice. And so for us, the future is all about truly holistic, dynamic planning that changes as your life changes. and something that actually gets you to take the action, makes it really easy for you to implement the advice. And of course, we believe the best way to deliver that is a combination of technology and humans. And we're very bullish on the role that the human plays because it's all about action on advice.
I love that. Yeah. So everybody listening, we are not saying your jobs are going away, but
No.
we are saying you do have to grow and change.
100%. Yeah.
I wonder if, I don't know if getting away with is the right term, but I remember when I got into the business, I'd look at these advisors that managed all this money and you maybe only had to talk to the client once a year. And I'm just like, this is crazy. Like this seems like the perfect job. So much flexibility. Eventually you can grow a team and like you could work 1 hour a week and make $1 million a year. I wonder if the public is kind of catching up and being like, we need more. Like that if you just manage assets or sell me a big insurance policy and then I never hear from you again, that's great for us. Obviously, the people manufacturing the products, it's been highly profitable. But what I heard you say is like, no, the consumer's asking for something different now. And the question is like, as advisors, how are we going to respond to that?
100%. And I don't think that, for the advisors out there, there's obviously we have a really big vision. We've built a business from scratch that is dedicated to this. But I think all, financial planners come into the industry to help people. And I think at the end of the day, the question is, how can you best help a person achieve a better life, right? The true pinnacle of financial planning is really, living a better life. And so the question is, what are the things that you need to start doing, right? Is it about checking in? There are small things that you could do, but, there's also bigger things around really just making people feel like you care and that you're not just there to sell them a product or take investments. And consumers have never been savvier. I mean, with social media, the internet, with AI now, right? You can go and get answers when you go to Claude or you go to Gemini. And so I think consumers have never been smarter. They're more in touch with reviews and word of mouth. And I think they know a little bit more about what they want or what they're looking for. And so finding a way to provide more service is and just showing people that you care, that they're doing the right things, I think really has a lot more value in this day and age than it did, let's say 20 years ago.
Yeah, I think that I know when I got into the business, everybody I met was a financial advisor. And then as I was in the business, I realized like, oh, that advisor mainly sells insurance. This advisor mainly sells assets. Like there's a lot of versions of financial advisors that I'm wondering in the future, if to say I'm a financial advisor, you will have to have more of a holistic process as opposed to I actually manage assets or sell insurance and then I sprinkle on free ideas as you ask.
Yeah.
And I'm for everybody listening, I'm speaking from experience. I was in the insurance side, I went to the investment side. It took me a while to figure out like, oh, I can actually have a process that delivers a holistic experience. It's harder at first because I have to change the way I've done the business, but eventually it can become efficient. And what's great is if you want to manage assets, you're probably attracting people that will let you manage their assets. And if you're good at insurance, you're probably still attracting people that need insurance. But it is almost reframing your identity and like, what is my job? Like, what is my purpose each day? And it was hard for me. I rejected it because I was like, if what you're telling me is true is that people actually pay me for just my time and ideas, either I've been doing it wrong the whole time or it's changing and I have to change with it. And all that stuff freaked me out when I was a young advisor.
Yes. I mean, change is hard, right? It's hard for clients and customers that are being told to do things differently with money. It's also hard for advisors. It's hard for all of us. But I do think that, especially right now, there's just an incredible amount of change. And although obviously we're big users of AI and we've been very thoughtful about it, I'm very bullish on human. And I think that because of the changes and the shifts in technology, consumer demand is shifting. And so, yeah, you can actually kind of bury your head and say, I'm going to do it this way. And there's a market for it. And there's a massive total addressable market, right? There's so many different consumers out there that you can do it a lot of different ways. And there's kind of a segment of people that are probably going to appreciate your way. But I do think by and large, as the boomers age out and the Gen X come in and the millennials come in, there are different expectations. And so really understanding that and figuring out like what is right for you, what's still true to how you're doing it, but adapting to the needs of the market is going to make each advisor more successful at the end of the day.
Yeah, it feels riskier to just hold fast. Like
Yeah.
I think this model is finally going to be the one that lasts for the next 300 years. It's like our industry is continuing to evolve and it's really like what's the next evolution of the advisor and how advice is delivered and I love the idea of technology and AI supplementing us, and then we can live in our superpower, which probably should be communication, accountability, encouragement. Like, it's one thing to, it's kind of like the gym membership. If the low cost gym membership would have solved everything, or like free content on YouTube, we'd all be healthy, but that's not the case. People still don't show up and still don't see it through. But like, if I can compel somebody to take action by taking the data and saying, hey, here's what this could look like for you, I think that's the superpower in the future for an advisor if they can figure it out.
1000% we agree. For us, the human and our CFPs, it's all about building trust and connection. And it's very much about, a lot of the behavioral finance elements of the job and figuring out like what is holding a person back or what is the psychology of money for them in terms of how they were raised and, what's getting in the way of them achieving some of the goals that they have. And for a lot of our members, when they speak with the CFP, we kind of joke it's like therapy with a calculator. Like sometimes you haven't even thought. A lot of people are just on autopilot. Life is so busy. You sometimes need an expert to stop and say, okay, what are you really trying to do? What is this money for? What are your goals? And I think that conversation requires a lot of vulnerability on the side of a client or a member. And so humans are really uniquely set up to do that. And so the more that time is spent on that behavior change and getting the action and the connection, obviously, the more retention you have for your particular client, but it's also really the best thing for the member.
Yeah. So Facet, we'll put you guys in the disruptor category for now. You are addressing this change with CFPs, subscription-based models.
Yep.
Help everybody listening understand, like, Facet's saying, hey, we're going to occupy this space. And yes, there's different nuances. People can build their own practices, but you are very convicted of like, this is where it's going and we're trying to be ahead of it.
100%. So we definitely were founded on principles around being consumer first and solving for a lot of what the industry we believe wasn't getting right and where the future is. And it was really about objectivity. And so, number one, we just thought financial planning a lot of consumers don't always feel that the planning is in their best interest, right? Like if you're selling products and making commissions and you're charging a percentage of assets, how do you really know you're getting the best advice? And so objectivity and a flat fee created an accessibility for people that don't have a tremendous amount of assets and don't get really great holistic planning or access to planning even. So I think that was first and foremost. And then secondly,
How'd you describe that market? Like, in the boardroom when you guys are making decisions, did you say it's people making a certain dollar amount and under a certain age group?
yeah, so great question. So, we really looked at the entire mass affluent segment. So that's about 40 million Americans in the country. And, typically, historically speaking, the asset level was anywhere from 100,000 to a million. But after COVID, a lot of single digit millionaires came in. So the new expanded definition of mass affluent, and Chip Rome, who runs the Tiburon organization, will be the first to say this. He's on our board, that really new mass affluent is like 100K to 3 million. And we squarely service that, but we actually will take people under 100K because we're not charging on assets. And so the income becomes a factor for us. So we're talking about people between $100,000 of income, give or take, depending on the market, to about, 500,000, give or take. That's really our sweet spot. When you look at the country, the majority of people fall in an age group of about, let's say, 25, 30 years old on the low end, all the way to, let's say, about, 60, 55 to 60. Now we have people that are, our members over 60 and everywhere kind of a little bit younger, but that's really the sweet spot. So people that are Gen Xers, younger boomers, older millennials, really in the prime of their life around retirement and some quite a bit a ways from retirement. They're grappling with those questions of like, am I doing the right things with my money? Yeah.
As we host a 2-day live event where we teach advisors to add planning to their practice. And I found the first step is like them understanding that planning is its own thing and that consumers are willing to pay for it apart from the product. And I think your data probably supports consumers see it as two different things. It's really advisors that try to smash it together. One more quick question. So how do you balance, one of the things we teach is service model and pricing, and those have to be in alignment. Because if you overserve and undercharge, the advisor's not happy. If you undercharge so how are you finding that balance?
Yeah, I mean, that's been a big part of a lot of a lot of our go-to-market and trial and iteration over the years. But, for us, it's really about first defining what this audience needs. Like, what are the core needs? And I think what we designed was, first of all, subscription pricing was critical. Secondly, we want to make sure for this part of the market that they don't have to worry about the advice that's being given to them, that we're not making commission. So we have a different sales team, and our advisors don't sell products. They don't bring on new members. That's really different. So the advice is purely objective. Yes. And then the other thing, that's part of our offering is that financial planning, we believe, should be holistic. It should cover all of these questions that a person has, and it should be dynamic and ever changing. And then, of course, we do believe a CFP is important in the equation, and having expert guidance, especially on the whole behavior change pieces. So that's those are our beliefs. And I think as it relates to getting the pricing and the packaging right, we have a really innovative pricing strategy. We've got 3 different tiers in the market, and they really start from around 2,000. They go up to, give or take, sort of mid 8 to 9,000. And there's 3 tiers, and they are really oriented around service level and complexity of life. So, for example, our top tier has bundled into it tax strategy and, tax preparation. And so you have these different services. Our middle tier, for example, and our top tier have more sophisticated investment offerings like direct indexing. So it's very much designed to the different audiences that sit in the mass affluent segment. And we've done a lot to make sure that the affordability equation along with the value equation is set up. And we've done a lot of research on this. We've iterated in the market, as our pricing and our offering has evolved. And I think we've really found a space where we're balancing that expectation of what people have and a feeling of really getting a lot of value from the service, which is ultimately what we're about, because we want, we see a world where all of these millions of people that have been excluded from financial planning can really participate in it. And for us, planning is first, it's all about your life and what you want to do. And the investing is how you make those goals happen. So investing is very secondary to planning, but it's an essential component of the value, which is why, it's included in the fee. We're not charging extra for investing.
So I'd love let's sit in this for a second. If we were coaching the people listening and they say, okay, we believe you, we believe that the consumers want something different, that the future advisor does not just sell investments or sell insurance. This isn't probably something you just switch overnight and I'm just a new person, new product offering, new process, new way to communicate. What does that look like? How would you coach up the advisors on how do you start moving in this direction to become a different advisor? And that doesn't mean you stop AUM, you stop insurance, but like you start communicating your value differently.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, there is a question you have to grapple with around what is the scope of your service. So, a lot of the industry gives away a financial plan as a marketing tool to collect assets. We obviously are like, hey, we're going to give you a roadmap that changes. And, assets are just like how you make those things happen. So it's a very different, we give away the investing for free, if anything. So it's like we flip the model. But I think for your average, for your sort of more traditional, where do you start? I think first you have to really be honest around what is the service you want to offer that you're capable of offering. And, maybe it is just a piece of the pie, and it's just investing and it's retirement planning. Well, okay, if that's what it is and it's a limited scope, I think there's a question of what do your clients really need and where do you want to take the business? So if you look at the average age of a customer in the wealth space, they're usually in their 60s. They've accumulated quite a bit of wealth. And so they're interesting for an advisor that charges assets. Well, for us, it was really more interesting to go after this underserved population. And those are going to be your Gen Xers and millennials. So if you're an advisor and you're saying, I really want to go after the retirement segment, well, then do that, right? Build the best retirement plans and really make sure you have an offering that is in line with what the retiree needs. But if you're thinking about expanding, maybe it's time to go after some of the kids of the retirees and talk to them and see what is it that they're looking for. And so I think it really depends on what's important to you and where do you want your business to go, because there's so much opportunity in the segment.
So I wonder if when we think about advisors, I know the tough thing I struggle with is If you would have asked me when I was, 24, am I a financial planner? Do I offer financial planning? I would have said yes. If you would have asked me at 28, I would have said yes again. It wasn't until I realized like, oh, a financial plan is not investments and insurance. Like a financial plan is cash flow, retirement, tax strategies, estate planning, risk management. Like, and I think as I meet with advisors and speak at conferences, I still feel this resistance of like admitting that we have not been doing what we thought we were doing to some degree. Like, and part of that is just accepting what a real full financial plan looks like, and then being able to communicate to a client that if I never see you again, I want you to know here's what a complete plan looks like. Maybe you then say, I'm going to own these two things and I'm really good at them. You still need help everywhere else. And I think if we don't tell the client that, they may never know they don't have a real plan. They have parts of it, they just don't have the full thing. And I don't think most advisors know how to explain that to somebody, or they're scared to.
I think that's so true.
So, advisors, the service model, the offering. So, what are you good at? Uh, Not what can you deliver that makes you money that they just don't know what questions to ask, or they don't have another option. But like, what can you be great at? I think that's challenging. What I know is if you can at least talk about the process of planning, I think that's a big hurdle. Uh, for us, we try to challenge advisors. You want to add maximum value with extreme efficiency because the client doesn't know if it took you 3 hours to do the planning or 20. And I think a lot of advisors aren't doing this because it feels really heavy. It feels like a big project. I have to totally change my system. And it felt that way for me when we started doing it until it got faster and faster and more efficient to where now what we can deliver for a client and get paid a fee and say, if you want to start a business and you're really good at that, you should do that. If you want to buy real estate and you have a really good business plan around it, you should do that. I don't have to be the advisor talking you out of other great things because I want you to put money in a mutual fund. And I feel like a lot of advisors are wrestling with that more than would admit it.
100%. I think that it's really tough, especially if you're an independent, right? Like there's so many aspects of running a business. You're acquiring, you're trying to deliver a service, you're also trying to make sure you're picking the right technology if you're using technology. But I do think that it all comes down to, and you said it, and I said it earlier, is just it's all about who are you servicing and what are their needs and what can you do to deliver value based on those needs, right? What makes you go to bed at night and say, I did something good for somebody, right? Like I've done my job. And I think you're right. Financial planning in its truest form, if you go to the CFP board and you read up on all the topics, it is really broad. And so in a way, if you're going at it alone or you have your own book of business, I do think that leaning into like what technology can I use to become more efficient is a really important question to ask. Like, what am I likely to adopt? What could I implement? Because that is a game changer. That is a force multiplier. And if you're spending a lot of time right now on administrative tasks, right, maybe that time can be offloaded and that allows you to expand your service or it allows you to do more business development. I also think that a lot of advisors really rely on the referral model. And there's just so much that can be done on customer acquisition. We have some of the highest organic growth rates in the industry, and we've built a demand machine similar to other consumer businesses. And it's not typical for financial services. It's more a page out of the subscription playbook. But there is so much demand out there. So I think thinking a little bit about, okay, what part of my business is something I don't really enjoy, I'm not really great at, can I offload some of it, is a really interesting place to start once you define, what is your goal and who are you going after.
Yeah, I think it's helpful for everybody listening right now. Take account of like what's happening inside of you. Are you excited about this conversation, or is there some level of resistance of like, I don't want to believe what they're saying. I don't think that's the way, because that's important. And then knowing like, why am I resisting it? Like, why am I trying to just hold on to what I'm doing now? Because this is changing. And what's doing this podcasting, you to speak, I get to be in rooms with people, and you are talking to these people where they're not advisor level, where it's like eventually everything gets to. It's like people knew about this years ago, and I think advisors are just realizing something's happening, and I can't really ignore it fully anymore.
Yeah, I think that's such a good message. And I do think that you can change things in really small steps. Like it doesn't have to be like, oh, I can't offer a flat fee. And, of course, like Facet is one extreme of a more disruptive service, but there are just so many micro steps that can be taken, whether it's offloading something to technology or a service provider, or rethinking just a little bit about, where do you add the most value and what are those things that you'd like to do. There's never been a better time to be in this business with the technology that exists. Obviously AI is a whole other conversation, and there's some, super dangerous things, and there's also some really helpful things in terms of computation. So, um, yeah, I think that's such a good message. But things are definitely changing. That is for sure, and pretty fast.
So you have a sales team and an advisor team. A lot of advisors listening have to like put the marketing hat on at times, take it off, sales hat, take it off. What are you learning about the pass off there? Like when somebody buys into Facet and the model, and then they say, okay, now here's your person. A lot of times the best advisors maybe aren't the best communicators. And sometime I've learned like the best salesmen advisors somehow have the biggest businesses. They're not even the smartest or the most organized. They just are great at sales.
Hmm.
How is that working when you're splitting those roles up?
Well, we split it quite intentionally. I mean, from a consumer perspective or a member perspective, we're really signaling that the person that gives you advice is there to give you the best advice and it's objective. And so I think that's, first and foremost, it's very aligned to the belief system of our model. The second is that we get to play to the strengths of different people, like a really great person that helps you explain why a service is great, maybe a very different type of profile than a person who is actually going to tell you, with a CFP, what is the right thing to do with your money. So we don't try to sort of jam all of that in one. That's the second reason. And the third reason is economically speaking, it's a very different model. So it works for us as well, right? Like if you think about the skill set and the expense associated with acquiring somebody, it's very different than service delivery. And so I think all of those reasons govern why we've split it. And it works really well, and we do take a team approach, right? It takes a village, and I think we want all of the people that come in to feel like they have an advisor that's really dedicated to them, that cares about what they're experiencing, understands them on a deeper level, and that none of our clients feel like they're being sold. Like that was a very important thing. If anything, we want our planners to sell behavior change or to do the right thing. And so there is always an element of selling something, but not, products or a service for a commission. I think then our clients can really relax and say, wow, if there's nothing in it for that person, for my planner. So this must be the right thing for me. And that creates a lot of safety and a higher probability of people taking action and doing the right thing.
Do you feel Facet, you said you built the demand engine. Are you going to have a talent issue at some point on the CFP side with all the, there's the shortage, 100,000 advisor shortage by 2030. Are you getting enough talent? How aggressively do you have to train them? Are they coming ready to go on day one? What does that look like?
Yeah. So we feel that there are a lot of advisors out there, especially advisors that got into this business not to actually sell, but to actually change people's lives. And that is the advisor that really resonates with the Facet mission, because you get to do what you do best, which is give advice and drive life change. You're not worried about selling people or hitting product commissions. That is a massive win for a big chunk of the CFPs that are out in America. So it's pretty compelling value proposition, but it is different, right? If you're a whale and you're an awesome salesperson and you're a great financial planner and you're going to go, make millions and millions of dollars, okay, we're not right for you. But there is a pretty big part of the market that really loves this model and doesn't really enjoy traditional product sales or commissions. And so this speaks to them. And there's, what is it, 80,000 to 100,000 planners out in the market right now, CFPs. And I think we take a good chunk of them. We're hiring like crazy right now because we're growing like crazy. And so, we're always looking for top talent that really resonates with our mission. And the other thing that we're really doing is, because we have a pretty differentiated point of view around this need to deliver holistic planning, there is quite a bit of onboarding and training. Like, for example, a lot of the industry fixates on net worth. Well, we don't, because, of course, we want you to know what your net worth is, but it's not the main motivator of what we're trying to accomplish with clients. And so there is quite an important role that training plays to help explain, like, well, this is what modern financial planning is we've defined it on our philosophy along with the rule set, that governs Facet. But we're doing personalized planning. So there's plenty of opportunity for each CFP to bring themselves. So we do have a lot of training programs that are coming in where you can start on our member experience team, finish your CFP, kind of move to the next level and get groomed into a senior lead planner at Facet. So we built those types of programming, with our people team and our planning leadership so that we can really help to train the next crop of CFP leaders in this country. So it's really both.
Yeah, what's that path look like? So CFP, somebody's passed that credential, they come to you. How long does it take them to absorb the philosophy, understand the system? Could they be client facing, helping people within 3 months, 6 months? How are you guys doing that? Because I know training for me is it's a thing, and it's like, how am I doing this well, the quickest without rushing them? Like, I think a lot of people listening that run firms with teams are like, training is this constant project.
It is a constant project. We do see it that way. We see it as really skill building and preparing our CFPs for what the country is going to need next. So it's very much about building that toolkit. But it really depends on the levels and the years of experience. So, what's most important to us is that when you're going in front of one of our members, you are ready. You feel ready, you feel trained. And there's always an element of like, you got to go, right? But we want to ensure that our planners have the skills and the experience to be able to provide great advice. So if you're brand new and you maybe just passed your CFP exam, you're maybe working on our membership experience team and you're interacting with members, you might become a reserve planner where when someone's out, you're helping out, you're doing things more behind the scenes. And then over time, you're graduating into more seniority as you've proven that you're ready to have independent relationships. And then there's different levels that, loosely correspond with the type of members you're working with. So if you're working with our complete tier is our top tier, they're usually having more assets. Their lives are a little bit more complicated. We're not going to take somebody that just finished their CFP exam and say, okay, here you go. Here's a really savvy, person that you're going to have to help, advise. We're going to be very thoughtful about matching that skill to the right member. So it's a very thoughtful approach. And, there's various levels that come in. And the training is, like you said, all the time. It never ends. It's just that constant body of work of how do you deliver great service and how do you make people feel comfortable? How do you get people to change their behavior? I think the behavioral finance, pieces of the education are becoming more interesting. I don't know if you agree with that in the work you're doing, but I think that's coming up a lot more.
Yeah. And I think I'd enjoy that part of the business more than I did the sales part. The sales is important, being convincing, communicating well. But as I've tapped into like efficient financial planning, I'm like, wow, this feels a little more purposeful. I maybe lost my way in the old model where I was like, is this it? Like, I'm just selling more stuff, making more money, which is great. But I think the purpose started dropping a little bit until I was like, no, okay, now I remember what it means to be a financial advisor and not talk people out of things because I want to get paid on it. Like that, I feel like most advisors at some point we hit a point, maybe weekly, monthly, where we're like, that wasn't bad advice. I think a lot of people are better off with the advisor they have today. I tell even my young advisors, there's people today that need what you have, and they're better off even if you're not the best advisor yet. But that doesn't mean we should stop short of being the best, most independent, creative advisor we can be, and we just keep pursuing that. But I do think the industry as a whole, we've kind of stopped short of what we know is full potential. And I feel we're just trying to like push us all there and be like, oh, we got a little bit more we can give. And how do we do that?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting observation. We talk about that a lot. It's like financial planning for us is like, it's a Maslow's hierarchy. And like the basics are, investing, retirement planning, like making sure you have an emergency fund. And then you kind of move up and there are these what's known in the industry as ancillary services. So, like, do you have an estate plan? Do you have insurance? Like, are you taking care of your 529s if you have children? Like, there's sort of this middle layer. But really for us, the top of the pyramid is self-actualization. And that sounds a little heady, but it's true. Like if, we really do believe money's a tool to live the life you want. And if we're doing planning at its full potential, it's helping people maximize their full potential. And so to do that, you're going to have a very different conversation, which is why back to the beginning of our convo, it's all about what do you really want to do, right? What's your purpose? Yeah.
Yeah, I look back to the 20-year-old version of my advisor self, and I was like financial planning, solving problems, tax strategies, and then life happens, and you go through some stuff. And I think now I could sit in a room with somebody that's going through a lot and just be like, "Wow, that's a lot." And my instinct is not like, "How do I solve a financial problem in your life?" Because sometimes that's not the highest priority. It's important; you got to talk about it, but it's the nuance of the human experience, and sometimes maybe the meeting you don't accomplish all the factual things. You're just like, yeah, well, what are we going to do about this? And so that took life and me, I'm a very logical person, to kind of build that muscle of like, it's a human to human interaction, and I'm going to encourage them. And I'm maybe even going to push back and call them out on something. We work with a lot of business owners, and they love when you confidently push back, because a lot of people don't know to do that. But to me, it's like, it just took experience and reps. And I think that's what you said about working to the top tier of complexity. It's like, it just takes time to learn that nuance, but definitely a good skill.
Yeah, you need to see some things and, live a little and have life beat you up a bit. And then you just become more resilient and, you're able to empathize, which interestingly, in a world of AI, right? Like, what does it even mean to be uniquely human? And it is so much about storytelling and sharing like empathy and being able to say, oh, I really understand. I understand that. And, I've done that too. Or, being able to be a bit vulnerable with your members and clients. Yeah.
Well, as we wrap up, for everybody listening, Facet could be looked at as competition. I think you guys are doing great work in raising awareness of there's more to financial advice, and I think for all the advisors that are saying we agree, we're also going to talk in that language. Facet is doing free marketing for you. They're selling people on this, and so you will run into people soon that want this approach, and Facet will have them as clients happily, or you will run into them and you will be ready to deliver a great experience, because there's more than enough for all of us out there.
So true. Yeah.
I appreciate you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Sten. Enjoyed our conversation.